I think Baylor's still a top 25-ish type team, but they have to go out and prove it. That was not a prove it showing on Saturday. I think the thing is you leave that with a really bad taste in your mouth because you know they could have, and they just did not perform as well as their opponent did, and did not perform in as many key opportune moments as their opponent did, and yet still there they were, still with a fighting chance that, deep into that game. But credit to the Cowboys, and Baylor's got to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and decide, like, they could very well be 5-0 right now, and they could also be like 2-3. So I don't know what they are. I know that they're good enough to be 5-0, but they're also mistake-ridden enough to be 2-3, and they're kind of in the middle of that right now, and that's just being young. But I hear all this stuff about them being young and then being young and then being young. Yes, they are young at wide receiver. We talked about that all offseason. We've asked Dave Aranda about why they didn't go grab anybody in the transfer portal, and he's addressed that. There's other spots where they were young too, but like they're losing because of special teams.
You know how many difference in yardage special teams were returned? 156 yards difference, which were really the two kickoff returns because they pretty much nullified each other on interception returns and also on punt returns, not much each. But 150, that's a field and a half that they gave up on special teams advantage.
Yeah, and that's basically how they made their mark under Matt Rule and then Dave Aranda last year. And it's like, that's not even a factor anymore. And actually it is. It's a bad factor in their games now at this point. So that's very concerning to me because that cost you the game in so many ways. It wasn't the only reason, but it was a significant reason why you lost that game was your special teams versus theirs. And so I know Dave Aranda talked about that. And we'll see with the bye week what they're able to do. But, they've got a lot of work to do to figure out if they want to be a 10-game winning type of team, which they're capable of, but they'd have to, basically not lose at this point, or if they want to be, like, barely bowl eligible, because that's entirely possible if they play the way they did on Saturday.
Yeah,
so.
And then the league, again, there's no easy outs, including, I know Oklahoma's kind of flailing right now, but eventually they're gonna beat Oklahoma against a couple teams.
Man.
Maybe,
that
we'll
defense,
see.
bro. That defense,
but everyone was
I know what
excited
you mean.
Lincoln Riley was there. They would be just fine without him.
Yeah.
And it looks ugly.
But for Baylor, we've talked about the inexperience at wide receiver. Kind of strangely enough, the guy with the most experience is Gavin Holmes, technically, because he's a 6-year senior.
Yeah.
But I said this in the postgame show the other day. He's the least experienced 6-year player in maybe the history of college football because he's been injured so much. And he had a game the other day that he will want to take back for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Had a drop that would have been a first down. Had a drop that would have been a huge play, and that one's maybe excusable. And then had a drop at the end of the game that was an interception that kind of sealed it for Oklahoma State.
You know what I saw from Oklahoma State when I was just early in the game? There's a team that came in angry, chip on their shoulder. You think they hadn't heard about that goal line play in the Big 12 championship game? Kind of reminded me of what we saw early with Brigham Young. Again, Baylor had a chance in that game, multiple chances. But I get the feeling that perhaps that edge that Baylor had last year, that grit that Eric Mateos talks about a lot, they have a few people that have that right back against them. And I don't like the way Baylor responded to that, even when they had a chance to get back in the game later on in the game.
I got off track of the point I was trying to make. You hear all the time about the youth on this team, and that's part of what's kind of dysfunctional right now is not that they're dysfunctional. It's just that they're not, veteran guys who kind of know the deal and know all that. But there's a lot of veterans on this team, guys.
Sure.
Like a lot of freaking veterans. Like the guys talking about in the postgame, Connor Galvin is a 5th-year offensive lineman. I don't know. I understand that, you don't have like 7 draft pick veterans, but you do have guys who are going to go to the NFL. You do have plenty of juniors and seniors who are actually older than they normally would be because of the COVID rules. And I'm hearing about the youth. Like I don't know. Like for them to come out and not have energy at home against a top 10 team coming off of a win on the road, and you could go to 2-0 in Big 12 play, and you got a sold-out crowd, and it's Saturday afternoon, and it's sunshine. Like, there was no reason for them to not have any energy on Saturday. Like, absolutely none. It wasn't an early kick. It wasn't bad weather. It wasn't, like, Albany rolling in. Like, there was no reason to not have energy at the beginning of that game, and yet somehow they didn't. And that's got to change, and I don't know how it does, but that has to change.
Oklahoma State has 4 seniors on offense. They're young, too, but guess what? They played – a fantastic game, even with opportunities early for Baylor and even some late, which was surprising because at one point it was 19-3 and it looked like it was pretty much over. But the kick return was incredible. And then, of course, they just couldn't punch it in. There's one play on the Richard Reese fourth down play. It wasn't fourth and goal. It was like fourth and a yard or two where Oklahoma State came up and made an incredible play to knock him down on the perimeter. Richard Reese, or you have to look at cutting, sticking your left leg in the ground and going right. He's a freshman. He's been able to outrun people all his life. He didn't get to do it on that play. And Oklahoma State with a huge stand there, almost on the edge to the left, which was not game-winning, but was a big-time play for Oklahoma State. I listened to part of Mike Gundy in the postgame. He was just looking at the numbers, all the numbers. And Oklahoma State, the 156 yards in special teams was incredible. And not just one kick return, but two. And I'm one of those that if you give up special teams coverage yards, or I think that is an edge meant. I think that's an emotion. And Oklahoma State had a chip on their shoulder. Kansas State wins. TCU blows out Oklahoma. That was for me because Oklahoma has not only won a bunch of Big 12 titles. They've always been the dude. Texas had their opportunity of one. Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor, whoever. My God, TCU just embarrassed Oklahoma on Saturday.
Yeah, it's Sonny Dykes with a lot of great toys that Gary Patterson put together over the last few years. I mean, it's like, what would Sonny Dykes look like in his home, state of Texas with these? I mean, like, he was at Cal, so he was surrounded by great athletes out there as well. But like, what could he do in like the homeland? With like these up tempo spread, trained guys from day one. And TCU recruited relatively well over the years. They were never like crazy good in recruiting under Gary Patterson, but they've always had athletes. We know that. And man, to have Sonny Dykes now with those athletes in his hands and Garrett Riley's hands, and to see them just demolish Oklahoma the way that they did is mightily impressive. I mean, I was not expecting that in any. I mean, I heard plenty of people say why they were choosing TCU before this game. I debated on it, and I actually had to weigh it. Okay, I could definitely see that, and I just thought no. Brent Venables has to rally the troops here. They can't. This is Oklahoma, right? They can't turn around and get beat by TCU after that. They've got to rally the troops after the K-State loss. And not only did they not, but one of the things that was really confusing to me was the number of analysts that were talking about Max Duggan as though he was some pocket passing quarterback. And I guess it's because they looked at his stats going into this game for this year, and they see not a lot of rushing yards. But if you've watched him, he can run the football. And so that was my grave concern was, okay, Adrian Martinez ran all over you, and here comes Max Duggan, who is capable of running all over you, so surely you're not going to allow that. Surely, if anything, you're going to stop the quarterback run, and Max Duggan just ran all over him. And, I mean, it'd be one thing if, there was no talent on the Oklahoma defense, but that's not the case. And even if that was somewhat of the case, it's still Brent freaking Venables, man. You hired him because of what he did defensively at Clemson for so many years. And instead, that was basically the feeling that you had when Brent Venables was a DC at OU and they were wanting to run him out of town. But worse, because it was absolutely embarrassing like they haven't been embarrassed in a long time. So, man, I know the Gabriel thing played into it sort of, but that was not why they got blown out.
No, that was headed bad.
And it's just a matter of how bad does it get before they kind of show some life? Because, man, with Texas coming up, that could get really ugly.
K-State took care of their business. Very competitive game. Tech kept staying around like they did against Texas. But how about Kansas winning again, unbeaten? And they won in a different way this time. They won in a defensive-type struggle in a turf war. They didn't have to score 35 or 40 points. Iowa State had something to do with that, but they won the game, and it's a great story in college football right now.
That was why I thought Iowa State would win the game, because I thought they would be the team that kind of stymied the Kansas offense. But Lance Leipold, credit to him, figured out a way to play Iowa State's game and beat him at it. And that's why he's up for a bunch of jobs. Real quick thought on TCU. The cliche, Smokey, is that teams take on the personality of their head coach, right? And I don't think that's true for any player more than it was for Max Duggan. Gary Patterson was real high-strung, and then Max Duggan, when things would go rough, he got really high-strung, right? And there were times, you remember Jerry Kill, holding the sides of his helmet and, telling the kid, hey, just calm down. calm down. It's okay. Like trying to you're the quarterback. You've got to take a beat a little bit here and take some deep breaths. Well, now Sonny Dykes is easygoing. So guess what? Max Duggan's a little calmer now, right? He's easygoing, and I think that is one of the reasons that he's been so successful the last couple of weeks is because his personality needs a guy like Sonny Dykes.
He's also a physical runner. He's not just one that will outrun you, which he can. He also will break a few arm tackles if, in fact, he has the space to do so.
No, yeah, he can run the football, and Oklahoma learned that. I just don't know how they didn't know that going into it, and if they did, they couldn't stop it. That's even more concerning, and he was just one of many problems that they faced. So, yeah, Oklahoma's got some things to look in the mirror about, and even with Dylan Gabriel, you're like, yeah, they can go beat the heck out of Texas. Like, I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen on Saturday. But to Iowa State, that was a horrific loss. Like, that was a bad loss. 16 yards rushing, fellas.
Oh, I know.
16 yards rushing for the Cyclones. That was just a terrible, terrible loss, and they had multiple opportunities to try and win that football game and couldn't make field goals and just couldn't get it done. So, Kansas wins 14-11, and it's great for them. It's great for Lawrence that they'll be getting College game day, but that is a abysmal loss for Matt Campbell and the Cyclones, and they had no business really losing that game, but they just played so poorly in certain areas that they lost, and I don't think that they're like a horrific team, but they got to really look in the mirror in a major way.
There are some teams, Craig and Paul, in the Big 12 who, if they're not careful, they're looking at something that no one expected. They're looking at like, wait a minute, we're going to have to scratch and claw to get to a bowl game and maybe beat somebody on the road or someone that you're not expected to beat. The way things are set up. Kansas, I saw this on they're now hitting the meat of their schedule.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that's true. But, boy, they're a fun story right now. So who is it? I think Oklahoma State, I had them pick second in the Big 12. One thing I want to say about Baylor as well. Remember last year about how they had that power wide zone running game and they would just beat you up with it? We saw some of that against Brigham Young. It didn't quite work. I know Reese is having a nice start. Two carries for Squirrel. Man, they don't have the banger. I don't think you have to have the 220-pound banger, but they missed Tay McWilliams. Oklahoma State averaged 3.6 yards per carry. Baylor 3.7. The difference was that Richardson and Gordon finished their runs. Richardson's a load, but Spencer Sanders, who is tired of hearing about how he gives the ball up too much against Baylor, wasn't perfect, but he was fantastic and probably the difference maker. Nothing against Shapen, but, man, I thought Spencer Sanders managed the game and was very efficient.
Yeah.
And he got away with his legs again.
Yeah, they couldn't get a hand on him, and that was a bit disconcerting just how unable they were to try and, be able to bring him down. But, yeah, I mean, that's what he can do. That he played a really good game. He threw a couple of near picks, I thought, early on, and I said to Paul, I said, he's going to throw an interception, and it was just a matter of time, and he did. He just only threw one, though, so that was good. That was progress, but he still threw the one. But overall, yeah, I mean, minus that, he played really well. And I think in the Big 12, looking at power rankings off the top of my head, I mean, yeah, you got to have TCU right there. You got to have KU. I mean, I believe in KU, but only to I do feel like they're about to start experiencing some other results. Like, I don't think they're going to go, 0-7 the rest of the way or anything like that. But I do think that, yeah, they're about to, face, some teams that will make field goals to beat them in a 14-11 game, like that. I think that there's some more capable teams that won't fall all over themselves like Iowa State did this past weekend. But I'm not trying to take away from them at all. I just think the schedule is going to ramp up in a major way. But they have to be Kansas and TCU have to be right there at the top. I think K-State's got to be right there in the mix. And then I think there's a second tier that's kind of who is it? Is it Baylor? Is it Texas? Is it Texas Tech? Who do you want to put in there? But yes, the two Kansas schools and Oklahoma State. And I'd put Oklahoma State at number 1 right now.
The odds in Vegas at Caesars Sportsbook, we have to break here. Oklahoma State plus 250, Kansas State plus 320, Texas at plus 400, TCU plus 450, and Baylor at plus 550, and then a massive drop-off even for Kansas at plus 1,200 down through Oklahoma Tech, Iowa State, West Virginia. We will have Brian Howell